Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're opening up a brand new case file on what has become a massive, high-stakes legal standoff over a truly iconic American institution. We're digging into the intense dispute over the renaming, the restructuring, and the planned closure of the Kennedy Center.
Here is how we're breaking down the docket for this case. 1. The incident. 2. The lawsuit. 3. The verdict. And 4. The aftermath.
So, the core of what we are investigating today really boils down to this fundamental and honestly fascinating legal puzzle. When it comes to a national monument, where exactly does executive action end and congressional authority begin? We're going to examine the evidence to figure out who actually holds the keys to the legacy and literally the physical doors of a federally backed cultural center.
Okay, let's jump right into Section 1. The incident, a new name, and a closed door. Look at this paper trail. It is just a rapid-fire escalation. In December 2025, a new name was abruptly added to the center. By February 2026, President Trump posts about a comprehensive review. In March, a pivotal board meeting triggers an immediate lawsuit. And then by May, bam, a sweeping federal injunction comes down. That is just 4 months from start to finish.
Now, if we follow that paper trail into the actual administrative actions, we are looking at a sweeping overhaul. The president became chairman of the center last year and then subsequently appointed all of the current voting board members. With that new board in place, the complex was officially renamed the Donald J. Trump and John F. Kennedy Memorial Center for the Performing Arts, or, the Trump Kennedy Center for short. But the changes definitely didn't stop at the name. The board dismissed most of the programming staff and initiated a plan to wind down all programming, preparing for a complete 2-year closure slated to begin in early July, right on the heels of the 250th anniversary celebrations.
Which brings us right to Section 2, the lawsuit challenging the takeover.
By March, someone steps up to hit the brakes. Representative Joyce Beatty of Ohio filed a lawsuit as the plaintiff to completely halt the administration's plans. And her legal standing in this case is actually super interesting. It relies on a really crucial detail. Representative Beatty was an ex officio member of the Kennedy Center board, but she had been stripped of her voting rights the previous year during that whole administrative reshuffle we just talked about. The whole thing basically becomes a legal tug-of-war. On one side, you have the newly appointed board's belief in their unilateral authority to just rename the building and pause its operations. And on the exact opposite side, you have what's called the Organic Statute, the foundational law passed by the United States Congress that actually established the center in the first place. So the court had to decide which of these holds the ultimate authority.
Let's look at what happened next in Section 3, the verdict, inside the 94-page ruling. Looking straight at the official court record, U.S. District Court Judge Christopher Cooper absolutely did not mince words here. He stated that the Kennedy Center's organic statute makes it, quote, crystal clear that the center is to be named for the late President John F. Kennedy. He ruled that it literally cannot bear any other formal name or public memorial based simply on the board's unilateral say-so. The gavel basically came down hard on the side of the legislature. Congress gave the center its name, and only Congress can change it.
14 days. The judge didn't just issue some philosophical ruling from the bench, he started a strict ticking clock. The court ordered that within exactly 2 weeks, all signage, plus all online materials referencing the Trump Kennedy Center or anything similar, had to be completely removed. No exceptions.
But wait, it wasn't just about the name on the door. The judge also temporarily blocked that massive 2-year closure. In his 94-page decision, Judge Cooper described the administration's renovation plans as murky. He specifically called out that none of the board members had sufficient information prior to that big March 16th meeting to actually make a well-considered independent decision to just shut down a premier arts venue.
The ruling also fact-checked some very public statements. Back in February, President Trump claimed on Truth Social that a thorough 1-year review of the center had taken place with contractors, musical experts, you name it. However, Judge Cooper's ruling stated there was zero evidence of such a review, finding that the sweeping decision to close the center completely lacked the expert consultation that was publicly claimed.
And finally, Section 4, the aftermath, dueling reactions.
For the plaintiff, Representative Beatty, this was obviously framed as a massive legal victory. Releasing a public statement, she declared that the ruling rightly affirms the administration's efforts had no basis in law. She emphasized that the Kennedy Center belongs to the American people, not to any one president, and expressed deep pride in protecting what she called a sacred institution from being desecrated for vanity.
But look, if we want the full picture here, we have got to follow the money.
$257 million. That is the massive sum that was successfully secured by the president and approved by Congress for urgent restorations. Because while the legal battle is all about naming rights and board procedures, the physical reality is a building that genuinely, desperately needs hundreds of millions of taxpayer dollars in structural work. And the Kennedy Center's current administration leaned heavily into that physical reality. Roma Daravi, the vice president of public relations for the complex, announced they fully intend to appeal the judge's decision. She pointed out that, hey, even the plaintiff acknowledges the urgent need for restoration. With $257 million sitting right there, ready to go, the PR team stated they remain committed to pursuing every lawful avenue to restore the cultural landmark for all Americans.
Meanwhile, President Trump took straight to Truth Social to fire back at the ruling. He highlighted the severe financial and structural troubles of the institution and issued a pretty stark ultimatum. He threatened to work with Congress to just completely relinquish his administration's oversight of the center. His message was unmistakable. Unless he is free to fix the institution physically, financially, and artistically his way, he has absolutely no interest in continuing what he described as a hopeless journey into Neverland.
So, wrapping up this explainer, we are left with a pretty stark question. The court has spoken on the law for now, but the physical reality of a crumbling cultural landmark is still right there. While this incredibly tense legal battle over power, precedent, and naming rights heads off to the appeals court, what happens to the actual building waiting in the balance? When hundreds of millions of taxpayer dollars for urgent restorations are tied up in a fight over a name on a door, who ultimately pays the price? Thanks so much for joining us for this explainer. We'll see you next time.